Like, comment, and subscribe.
In a faraway kingdom, there lived a kind but lonely couple. For many years, they wished for a child. Their house was small but filled with warmth and love. Behind their cottage lay a magnificent walled garden belonging to a powerful sorceress. This garden was unlike any other. It blossomed with magical herbs, golden flowers, and crisp green vegetables that seemed to glow under the sun. One day, the wife stood at her window and spotted a patch of radiant green plants called Rapunzel growing inside the sorceress's garden. The sight of the fresh leaves made her heart ache with longing. Day after day, she gazed at them until she could think of nothing else. She whispered to her husband, "If I do not eat some of that Rapunzel, I shall surely waste away." The husband loved his wife dearly, so under the cover of night, he climbed the high wall and carefully picked a handful of the plants. His wife prepared a salad, and once she tasted it, her craving only grew stronger. The very next night, her husband sneaked into the garden again. But this time, the sorceress was waiting. Her eyes flashed like fire. "How dare you steal from my garden?" she thundered. The man trembled and begged for mercy, explaining that his wife was with child and craved the Rapunzel. The sorceress's gaze softened ever so slightly, though her voice remained cold. "Very well," she said. "I shall let you take as much as you wish. But in return, you must give me the child your wife will bear. That child shall belong to me." With no choice, the husband agreed, though his heart was heavy. When the baby girl was born, the sorceress appeared. She named the child Rapunzel, after the plant that had caused her parents misfortune. Without allowing the parents a word, she swept the baby away, raising her as her own. Rapunzel was only a tiny baby when her fate was sealed by the witch. True to her word, the wicked enchantress came to claim the child from her parents. The poor mother wept bitter tears, but she was powerless to stop the witch. With a wicked smile, the witch scooped the baby into her arms and vanished into the dark forest. Unlike most homes, the witch had no intention of raising Rapunzel with love or kindness. She was selfish and cruel, and she feared that one day someone might try to take the child back. To prevent that, she created a plan. Deep in the heart of the forest, where no one dared to wander, she built a tall, lonely stone tower. It had no door at its base and no staircase inside. The only way in or out was a small window high above the ground. It was in this tower that Rapunzel was locked away. As a baby, she cried and cried for her mother, but no one came. The forest was silent, except for the hooting of owls and the rustling of leaves in the wind. The witch would visit her, but not with warmth or comfort. She came only to make sure Rapunzel was fed and kept alive. As the years passed, Rapunzel grew into a beautiful little girl, with eyes as bright as the morning sky. The tower was her entire world. She had never walked in a meadow, never touched a stream, never played with other children. Instead, she stared out of the window, watching the birds soar freely above the trees. Sometimes she sang little songs she made up, and her voice was so sweet that even the birds perched near her window to listen. The witch, however, was possessive. She saw Rapunzel's beauty and sweet voice as treasures that belonged only to her. "You must never leave this tower," she would warn with her sharp voice. "The world is full of dangers, and only I can protect you." But Rapunzel didn't feel safe. She felt trapped. Each night she dreamed of what lay beyond the forest. She wondered about her parents, though she did not know who they were. Sometimes she placed her hands on the cool stone of the tower wall and whispered, "One day, I'll be free." The only visitor she had was the witch, and the only thing that changed was Rapunzel herself. Her hair, golden as the sun, grew longer and longer every year. The witch refused to cut it, believing the hair's magic made Rapunzel even more precious. By the time she was a young maiden, Her hair was so long it reached the ground when she leaned from the tower window. The forest animals adored her. Birds often brought her tiny twigs or berries, as if they sensed her loneliness. Rabbits hopped at the base of the tower, looking up at her. Yet, as kind as nature was, Rapunzel remained a prisoner. She would press her cheek to the window frame and sigh, "If only someone could find me. If only I could find myself." And so, Rapunzel's childhood faded into girlhood, and girlhood into maidenhood, all within the cold stone walls of the tower. She didn't know that destiny was already weaving its threads, preparing a great change. For soon, her golden hair and her beautiful songs would bring someone new to the tower, someone who would change her life forever. Rapunzel grew into a beautiful girl with hair as golden as sunlight. Her laughter was bright, her voice sweet as songbirds, and her eyes sparkled with kindness. The sorceress, however, feared that Rapunzel might one day be taken away. To keep her hidden, she built a tall, lonely tower deep in the forest. This tower had no door and no staircase, only one high window at the very top. The only way to enter or leave was by climbing Rapunzel's hair. Whenever the sorceress wished to visit, she would stand at the base of the tower and call, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, that I may climb the golden stair." Obediently, Rapunzel would loosen her long, shining braids, and the sorceress would climb up. Years passed. Rapunzel lived alone, with only the forest animals and the songs she sang to keep her company. She longed to feel the earth under her feet, to explore beyond the walls of her prison, and to know the world she had never seen. But the sorceress forbade her from ever leaving. What Rapunzel didn't know was that fate was already preparing someone who would change her life forever. One sunny afternoon, a young prince rode through the forest. As he wandered, he heard a voice sweeter than any he had ever known. The melody floated like a dream through the trees. Curious, he followed the sound until he found himself before a tall, doorless tower. He gazed upward, and there she was, Rapunzel, singing at her window, her golden hair glittering in the sun. The prince was captivated at once, but he did not know how to reach her. As he hid among the trees, he saw the sorceress arrive. "Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let down your hair!" she cried. The prince watched in amazement as Rapunzel's hair tumbled down and the sorceress climbed up. When she was gone, the prince stepped forward. His heart pounded with hope and fear. The next evening, he returned, stood at the base of the tower, and called in the same voice, "Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let down your hair!" Rapunzel, thinking it was the sorceress, dropped her golden braids. To her surprise, instead of the familiar figure, a handsome young man appeared at her window. At first, Rapunzel trembled. She had never seen another soul besides her guardian, but the prince spoke gently, telling her he had heard her song and could not resist meeting the one who sang so beautifully. His kindness eased her fear, and soon they spoke for hours, as though they had known each other all their lives. From that day forward, the prince visited Rapunzel often. He brought her stories of the outside world, of markets, palaces, and people living free. And slowly, the dream of freedom grew brighter in Rapunzel's heart. As the days turned into weeks, Rapunzel and the prince grew closer. Their laughter echoed through the tower walls, and their hearts grew lighter each time they met. Rapunzel listened eagerly to every story the prince shared, especially the ones about the villages filled with music, families walking hand in hand, and children playing under the open sky. One evening the prince said, "Rapunzel, why should you remain trapped in this tower forever? You belong out in the world, free, happy, and loved. Will you come with me to my kingdom?" Rapunzel's eyes widened. No one had ever offered her freedom before. Her heart beat fast as she whispered, "But how? The tower has no door, and the sorceress will never allow it." The prince thought for a moment. Then he smiled. "Every time I visit, I shall bring you a strand of silk. You can weave them together into a ladder. When it is ready, I will come for you, and together we will escape." Rapunzel's spirit filled with hope. For the first time, she had a plan. Each night the prince came, he handed her a new piece of silk. Rapunzel carefully hid them and began weaving the strongest ladder her delicate hands could make. But Rapunzel was innocent and pure of heart, untrained in keeping secrets. One day, while the sorceress was combing her golden hair, Rapunzel spoke without thinking. "Mother Gothel," she said softly, "why is it so much harder to pull you up than it is to pull the prince? He is so light compared to you." The sorceress froze. Her eyes burned with fury. She grabbed Rapunzel's hair and hissed, "You wicked child! You have betrayed me!" Before Rapunzel could explain, the sorceress's rage consumed her. She snatched a pair of shears and with one sharp sound, snip! Rapunzel's glorious golden hair fell to the floor. Weeping, Rapunzel begged for mercy, but the sorceress was unmoved. With a cruel spell, she banished Rapunzel, far away into a wild desert where there were no houses, no people, and no hope of rescue. The tower stood empty, or so the prince thought. That very evening, the prince returned, his heart filled with joy at the thought of taking Rapunzel away. He called out, "Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let down your hair!" The long golden braids fell, and he climbed eagerly to the window. But instead of Rapunzel's gentle smile, he was met by the sorceress's cold, triumphant stare. "So," she sneered, "you are the one who dares to steal my child away. You shall never see her again." Before the prince could speak, she released her magic. With a terrible force, he was hurled from the tower. He fell into the thorny bushes below, which tore his flesh and blinded his eyes. In pain and despair, the prince stumbled into the dark forest, calling out Rapunzel's name, but his voice was carried away by the wind. Meanwhile, Rapunzel wandered the desert. Her tears fell like rain as she longed for her prince. With no home and no food, she learned to live among the wild. She sang to comfort herself, and her voice carried across the empty lands, filling the silence with hope. The sorceress believed she had won, but destiny still had plans that even her magic could not undo. Time passed slowly. Rapunzel lived in the desert, her once soft hands now strong from gathering roots and wild berries. She no longer had her tower, but her heart carried the memory of her prince. Sometimes she sang, and the animals of the desert gathered around, listening as though they too believed in her hope. Far away, the prince wandered blindly through forests and valleys. Though he could not see, he followed the sound of every bird, hoping it might lead him to Rapunzel. He survived on roots and fruit, his clothes ragged, his once proud face marked with sorrow. Yet in his heart, he never gave up. Years went by. One day, as the prince walked through a desert valley, he heard a familiar melody. His heart leapt. It was her voice. Weak and trembling, he followed the sound until he reached a clearing where Rapunzel was singing, her golden hair, though shorter, still shining in the sun. "Rapunzel!" he cried. At first, Rapunzel thought her heart was playing tricks. But when she turned, she saw him, blind and worn but alive. Tears rushed to her eyes. She ran to him, threw her arms around his shoulders, and held him close. "Prince," she whispered, "you found me." As they wept together, two of Rapunzel's tears fell upon his eyes. Suddenly, a miracle occurred. The prince's sight was restored. He blinked against the sunlight and saw her face clearly for the first time in years. It was more beautiful than he had ever imagined.